Hey, it's me, OGDuffy, and I am back with a versus video, my friends, and we are looking at this shoot 'em up here by Capcom, Gunsmoke. I remember playing this back in the day in the arcade, and I have to say it was a great game and one I really enjoyed, but my God, was it tough. I found it really hard. It's one of them games I'd play 5 or 6 games of in quick succession, but could never really get very far on it. But it kept me coming back, so it's a sign of a good game. Okay, the other sort of synonymous games of that time were the Wild West in the arcade, Sunset Riders. Needs no introduction, does it? But enough of that. Gunsmoke. Now the versions we're going to be looking at for this week, obviously the arcade original version is we need something to compare to, and then we're going to go and look at the NES version, the Nintendo Entertainment System, and after that we will take a look at the Saturn version, the Sega Saturn, which is a system we don't look at very often, and the PlayStation version, both released on like a compilation of Capcom games, and they are slightly different. Not a lot in it between them really, because they just pretty much emulate the whole arcade original. So they're not the versions we'll really be looking at that deeply. But then we come to them classic 8-bit systems. Yes, the Commodore 64, the Amstrad CPC, and of course the humble little ZX Spectrum. It banged a game for its size though, didn't it, guys? Come on, what's not to love? I had the rubber keyed special. Still put it down there actually. What a system. I loved it. And I loved the Commodore 64 as well. Anyway, we're going to be looking at all 3 versions that were released on them 8-bit systems. So before we get our comparisons underway, we'll go look at the arcade original so we know what we're comparing to. And remember guys, stick around to the very end of the video, because I will give you my verdicts and opinions, and I'll be telling you which I think was the best version and why. Gunsmoke, Capcom, what's not to love? Gunsmoke by Capcom, 1985. Let's go straight into it. Now, as I've already said to you guys, this is one game I did find particularly difficult back in the day, alright? So don't expect me to set the world on fire with this one. 10 levels, a boss at the end of each. These are the wanted guys. You probably won't see me reach the end of the level if I'm being fair. 3 fire buttons, 1 shoot straight, 1 to the left and 1 to the right, because you get guys appear in them windows, give you nasty little shots that you don't need. You can also shoot the barrels for little power-ups. So I've got a pair of boots there. I'm assuming they make you a little bit faster. Oh, wiping out quite a few of the guys there. The music's gone off. I've lost my sound effects by the sound of it. Oh, comes alive then. But anyway, you get a general idea how this works. It was a great game, but like I say, I just really struggled with it. I just couldn't get particularly far at any time. But I enjoyed it, you know, which was what it was all about back then. But certain games I just really struggled on, and this just happens to be one of them, you know. Maybe it's the freeway shoot thing. I really don't know, but there we go. So that gives us a little insight. Let's go check out them home versions. Let's do the Nintendo Entertainment Systems first. Get that out of the way, because that's not half bad. Then we'll go take a look at the other home consoles, which are the Saturn and the PS1, and then them 8-bits. The first version we're looking at is the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, as you can see, it was very bright, it was very colourful, and it did not look dissimilar to the arcade version at all. So, all in all, I felt this was really well done. Now, in comparison to the arcade, it wasn't completely accurate in terms of the way it converted. It had 6 levels instead of 10, but it had some great differences, and it had like a storyline you could follow as you were playing, and not just that, the enemies would drop money bags as you saw there, and you pick up the money bags and you reach shopkeepers, and this is where it got fun, because you bought upgrades for your character. So I thought that was a really nice touch and a great spin on things. So although we haven't got the NES version to compare to others, it was a great job, so well done NES. The Sega Saturn, not a system we see that often when we're doing these versus videos. Now, as you can see, and as you would probably expect, this is not dissimilar to the arcade at all. This converted brilliantly to both the Saturn and the PlayStation, which, let's be honest, you'd expect it to.
There are a very few slight oddities between the two, but they are very minimal completely. They really are. So all in all, this was released on Capcom Generations. I think it was number 4 in Japan. Now I don't know, but you guys, if you know, drop it in the comments. Was this released in the West on a Capcom package for the Saturn? And if so, what was the name of that, please? Drop it in the comments as always, guys. Now, let's go take a look at the PlayStation version. And on to the PlayStation 1, or the PS1 as we so fondly remember it here in the UK. Now, this version, along with the Saturn version, as I've already said, there was not a lot between them and the arcade original. Because let's be honest, both of these systems had the capabilities of handling great emulating this game completely. So it wasn't like it was reworking anything as such. There are a few real slight differences between the two, which I'll come to when I'm discussing that at the very end, when I give you my comparisons of which I think is the best version overall, etc. Now, this was released on Capcom Generations 4, which I believe is a Japanese import. Was this also released in the West on a game? And if so, what was it called? Was it like a Capcom Generations or something? As always, guys, in the comments, let me know. Now, let's go take a look at them classic 8-bit systems. Kicking off the 8-bit systems, the humble ZX Spectrum. Now, this was originally called Desperado, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was released by a Spanish software company. They did not have the license, and then when it came to releasing it here in the UK and other parts of Europe, they actually sought the license and Capcom granted it. So the difference between Desperado and the Capcom version that we probably are more aware of, especially here in the UK, would be that the loading screen was slightly different, and like the Capcom name was implemented and things like that. Now, this didn't play particularly great, don't get me wrong, but graphically there's a slight cuteness to it that I really do like, which only the sort of the Spectrum can do, and it does it so well in so many of these little conversions. You know this is Gunsmoke, right? But it's done in that specky style, which I'm still a fan of to this day. Next up here, the Amstrad CPC. Now, normally there was the licensing issue as well, but normally what we see with the Amstrad is they get offcasts of the ZX Spectrum graphics and usually throw a bit of a splash of colour on it. But this was not the case. It was a completely only independent game. It looked very different to the specky version, and it did okay. All in all, it weren't too bad. It was quite a hard game, except for the bosses. Strangely, you get to the boss levels, and the bosses sort of roll over a bit for you on this one. So well done, Amstrad, on this one. Great use of the colour palette, and nicely done. Now, before my official comparison verdicts, the Commodore 64 version. Now, this was the only official licensed version originally by Capcom for the home computer systems. As we've already said, the others had to seek the permission later in the day, but Commodore 64, they had the license pretty much from the start. As you can see here, quite blocky graphics. The sort of colours that are a bit washed out, I felt, really, but that's a Commodore 64 thing, you know. And all in all, they weren't too bad, but the controls were a bit of a mess on this. If you steered left, you shot left. If you steered right, you shot right. And if you faced forward, you didn't shoot at all until you pressed the fire button. So I'm not sure what that was all about, really, but hey ho, that's all the versions. Let's go get my official verdicts now.
And now my comparison verdicts. Which version was the best in my opinion? Now, as always, guys, if you don't already do so, hit that subscribe button, hit the like and all that good stuff. But more importantly, in the comments, let me know your thoughts and your memories of these games and about my verdicts. Do you agree with what I'm about to say, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments, please, because I don't always get it right. It's only my opinion, guys. So it's always great to hear what knowledge you guys have on these games, because, mate, some of the stuff you guys come up with really surprises me. How would people know that? But we do. This is amazing. So it's a great community here, guys. Anyway, this is the item. And let's get to them all-important verdicts. Now, the first one we're going to give you my comparison of was the NES version, the Nintendo Entertainment System. There was no other version to compare it against in the same sort of category as that system. So obviously it takes it. But what I liked about the NES version, although it didn't have as many levels as the arcade, and it didn't follow the arcade conversion accurately, it actually done really, really well. It had its own little storyline going on, which is a nice touch. And on top of that as well, you could save money up and then visit the shopkeepers and buy your upgrades for your weapons and things like that. So it was a nice little touch. So very well done to the NES on this. I thought it was a very, very nice conversion indeed. Then we come to the Sega Saturn and the PlayStation 1. Now, them two consoles, they were brought out to compete, weren't they? But there was only one clear winner there, wasn't there? But anyway, we digress. We must get back to Gunsmoke. Now, Gunsmoke was released on these systems in a compilation. I think it was a Capcom Greatest Hits 4 or Volume 4 or Capcom Arcade 4. Something like that anyway. I'm sure I'll put some pictures up of the covers as I'm talking to you guys on this. Now, obviously, they were great systems, so they wouldn't struggle converting this, etc. But strangely, between the two versions, I found that the Saturn version was slightly smoother and played only ever so slightly different, better than the PS1 version. Not a lot in it, and to be honest, you'd have to be really sort of to notice, you know what I mean? You'd have to really dig down, but I just felt it was smoother, just smoother, that was all. So it goes to the Saturn. So well done, Sega Saturn. That's a win for you. The 8-bit versions, as we all remember those classic days of our schools, those of a certain age will remember, we used to have little debates in the playground over which system was the best. In the early days of my school life, I was always Team Spectrum. I was right behind the Spectrum every time. And then a few years on, I then got a Commodore 64, and I loved that as well. I still have a lot of love for the Spectrum though. Amstrad was a system I never really touched on back in the day, but had a lot of similarities to the Spectrum. And there was those kids at school who had some BBC Micros. You know, you had money if you had a BBC Micro. And then there was the kids I always felt sorry for that had a Commodore Plus 4 or an Acorn Electron. I always felt sorry for them. I thought, oh no, they're poor kids. You know, the parents didn't know what they were buying. I just thought they were doing the right thing by buying them a system like that. But anyway, we digress. Getting back to the game. So, in the order, in third position for the 8-bit systems, I'm giving it to the Sinclair ZX Spectrum. Now, strangely, originally this game was called Desperado, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, it was done by a team in Spain, and it wasn't an official licensed product by Capcom. And my understanding was when it got released here in the UK, the company that was releasing it then sought and got proper permission, so it was then licensed by Capcom. And the only difference changes, I think, between Desperado and Gunsmoke on the Spectrum was the screenshots, sort of, you know, the static screenshot, just so it's more authentic to have the Capcom logo and stuff. To be honest, graphically, I thought it looked alright on the Spectrum. I quite liked it. I mean, because the Spectrum graphics on some of these conversions we do over this channel is they're quite cutesy in places, and you do see that they are the arcade conversion. So I didn't think it looked too bad. It just didn't play particularly well, and it wasn't the greatest. That's all. So in second position, Commodore 64 takes second. Now this was officially licensed by Capcom from the off. Wasn't too bad, to be fair. The controls were a bit awkward. If you steered left, it would just shoot automatically as you're going left. If you went right, it would shoot automatically as you were going right. And to shoot straight ahead of you, you had to hit the fire button. So you could fire left and right without pressing the fire button and stuff like that, and it just didn't work very well for me. But all in all, didn't look too bad, did it? You know what I mean? It was quite nice, it was playable, but there has to be a winner. So, those with a half a brain will now know there's only 3 in it, and we've named the other 2, so yes, the Amstrad takes it this week. So well done, Amstrad CPC. Usually, with the Amstrad, they get like off-cast graphics from the Spectrum, just sort of same graphics and sometimes a splash of colour. But not with this version. Had its own version going on. It was completely different to the Spectrum, which was good. It was nicely done. I thought it looked nice, it was colourful, it was bright and bold, and it played half well. It wasn't too bad at all, you know. So all in all, very well done to the Amstrad. Congratulations on a win this week. So guys, if you enjoy all this sort of retro gaming stuff and the rest of it, be sure to hit that subscribe button, hit the like for me, and of course comments, share your memories. And I'll tell you what, let's go down, let's answer the question this. Do you remember the Playground Wars with the 8-bit systems? Yeah? What was the standout system for you guys, and which ones? Am I right in saying only push kids had BBC Micros? Is that just me? Or was that just the area I come from? Because to me, a BBC computer was only in a classroom. You'd be lucky to see one in a classroom. Well, I think my school had one. Yes, it was not the best area in the world. But hey-ho, you know, it is what it is. Anyway, guys, I've been OGDuffy. I really look forward to reading your memories about this one. Cheers. Look after yourselves.